Hello, friends, and welcome to the Reclamation Podcast. I'm your host, Megan Colleen Johnson, and I'm here to guide us in raw conversations about thriving in life and work, so that together we can step into personal agency and stop letting life happen to us. We'll cover topics like health, boundaries, communication, finances, and worthiness. That badass business you've been dreaming of, it's not so far off. The desire to wake up feeling fully alive, it's right around the corner. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast today. I am really excited about today's conversation and just kind of seeing where it takes us. And today I'm recording from my office. I have some hot cacao in front of me. I have it with the mushroom blend from Four Sigmatic, and I'm just really loving it today. It's a rainy day outside, and so I'm kind of cozy in my office tonight. And on the call with me today, I have Sammie Fleming. So Sammie is a coach for women who are ready to connect with their true feminine power and up-level their lives with ease and calm. She supports her clients to cultivate deep inner confidence like never before and live deliciously attuned to their natural rhythms, stepping into a life of flow. She is known for her intuitive yet grounded coaching style, guiding her clients back to who they truly are and supporting them as they rise exponentially. Sammie weaves her passion for feminine cycles into her work, allowing her clients to embrace their full power of feminine energy. Sammie loves creating safe and sacred spaces through her one-on-one online coaching, her group coaching program, The Collective, as well as holding women's circles around the world and teaching her signature sacred space facilitation program, Holding Space. So, Sammie, I am so excited to have you on today.
My gosh, thank you. I'm so happy to be here with you.
I would love if you could just kind of share where you're recording from, what you have in front of you, kind of set the stage of where you're coming from.
Oh, yes. I am in Melbourne, Australia. It is Friday morning here and it is a gorgeous sunny morning. I've just come back in from a walk. I have a peppermint tea, but I really wish I had the cacao that you've got. I have a candle lit and I'm surrounded by plants, and I have my obligatory box of tissues in front of me because I feel like so often I get moved to literal tears through my work and through conversations like this. So always prepared.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that so much. And I have really appreciated your energy from afar. So I feel like it's really fun to actually chat with you one-on-one and get to hear more about your work.
Oh yeah, I feel that too. And yeah, it just feels really, really good to connect in this way and have this conversation that we can share. Amazing.
I love it. Awesome. So I am curious, what is your story? How did you start in this work? And just kind of what did you have to reclaim to step into the life and the work that you're doing right now?
I love that question. Okay. So I can trace it all the way back to being a child who just wanted to read and was reading self-development books as soon as I knew that was even a thing, who was kind of visiting I guess what we would call like the new age stores in my small hometown in New Zealand as early as I could, like being 13 years old and going there after school and just looking around and reading affirmations and quotes and just being kind of enamored by this world. While at the same time feeling deeply sensitive, being a highly intuitive, deeply sensitive child and human, which isn't always easy, which was kind of challenging, being in a room and kind of picking up on how everyone was feeling, but not having any understanding of energetic hygiene and, taking care of my own energy, of course. I was so little. And then as my life progressed, I just really noticed that the thing I loved more than anything was talking to people about how they felt. And that lit me up in every single way. But I didn't know quite how to turn that into a job, I suppose. And so I left school and went to university and actually studied communications. Originally, at the beginning, I intended to be a TV presenter. That was my dream. 3 weeks in that degree, realized that was not the thing, but stayed for the few years of that degree and just kind of meandered through all sorts of different possibilities, teaching psychology, creative industries, and got to the end still pretty confused and, zero clarity around what was next. But I really felt this pull of how can I talk to people about how they're feeling all the time, but while still being a deeply sensitive human. The obvious kind of option for me was to become a therapist, but at that point in my life, I believed that I was too sensitive. I wouldn't be able to hold the depth of that work. And now that's definitely changed. And I feel like that's, that would be no problem. But then it really was. And so I just then went on I don't know how many years, like a 6-year experiment of what does career and joy look like for me. And I mean, I would be here all day if I told you all of the jobs that I did throughout that period, but just kind of like trying things out. And like, for example, I made like potions and lotions for a little while. And as I was selling those, I would just feel like, oh, I just want to talk to you about how you feel about this thing. I don't even really care about giving you this thing. And so bit by bit by bit, it was like little pieces of the puzzle were falling into place until I discovered, I believe 6 or so years ago now, life coaching, which honestly I had never really heard of before that. And it felt like, when everything becomes super clear and you realize, oh, that's the thing I've been searching for. That's the thing I knew I wanted to do. I just didn't know it had a name.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so actually it was probably 7 or 8 years ago. And I searched for a few years just trying to figure out which kind of school I wanted to train at. I really wanted to be a trained practitioner. And so I explored all sorts of options until I landed on the one that felt really right and good for me, which you and I have both studied within. And from there, it was a process of doing the study, absolutely, but also shifting the idea that my sensitivity was a weakness and, in fact, I believe is now a superpower. It was also a necessary reclaiming of my feminine essence, everything that I believe that supports me in my work now, that I had been, I suppose, conditioned in many different ways to believe was not a strength, but in fact a weakness.
Yeah.
For example, intuition, heart, work, feeling-based decisions, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I guess also a remembering that the thing that came most naturally to me, like I was allowed to do that for my work. I was allowed to do a thing that felt so innate and so natural, and that gift was actually, I felt like it became, rather than it seems ridiculous to do that as your job, it became you have a responsibility to show up with these gifts and turn them into your work. So I suppose that's a little glimpse into my story and what I had to reclaim in order to actually do the work.
Wow. Yeah, that is so beautiful. And I love just kind of hearing what that journey looked like. I specifically really resonate kind of towards the end of that when you talk about just reclaiming your intuition and those gifts that are innately within you. And I think a lot of us as women specifically, we resonate with that because there are a lot of like cultural conditioning, like what you mentioned around that in order to thrive in our own skin, really, we have to reclaim those things. And that is just such a beautiful story. And I really appreciate you sharing that because I feel like it's very inspiring as well. So I love that.
Thank you. Yeah. And it's still a process, right? Like I would absolutely say still in the reclaiming process for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Whenever I talk about reclamation within my ever-evolving brand messaging, I always like to think of it as a reclamation journey. Like it never really stops. It's part of our evolution as humans, I feel like. We're always growing and always having the opportunity to grow, which I think is also a really beautiful part of being human.
For sure. The evolution that we are all part of.
Yeah, I love that. So A big part of what we're going to talk about today is reclaiming feminine power and rising with ease. And I feel like your story already shares a little bit into reclaiming feminine power and rising with ease within your own story. But I know that now that's a huge part of your work, is guiding women to reclaim their feminine power and to rise up in their gifts. And in talking about feminine power, I'm curious if you could share, what does feminine power mean to you? And when you talk about it, I know even for me, as I'm still very early on in this work, I feel like I'm still in the early stages of reclaiming femininity. And so I'm really curious, like, what does feminine power mean to you?
Right. I think sometimes people hear those two words together and assume there's a juxtaposition, like how can we haven't really been taught that that they coexist and they support each other.
Yeah.
And so to me, feminine power, firstly, I suppose, is a real celebration of our feminine nature. And I guess I just want to note here that by feminine nature, I don't mean female nature. I mean the feminine energy. And I'll speak to what that means. Like a word that you could swap in for this is the yin nature, the feminine nature. And so our feminine nature encompasses things like our emotional intelligence and well-being, our nurturing nature, our ability to receive, our intuition, our the state of being rather than doing. And then on the flip side, just to clarify this, the flip side of, I guess, what we would call the masculine nature is the doing, the achieving, the at times even forcing, the productivity, that side of things. Yeah. The logic over the emotion. And so most of us have been conditioned, whether it's through family, society, both, so much more, that the masculine is of more importance, of higher importance. So it's more important that you understand the facts of something than that you feel the truth of something. It's more important to do than it is to be. It's more important to give than it is to receive. And so I think an exploration of our feminine nature, and then secondly, a celebration of that, changes the game. It changes everything. When we recognize how powerful our intuition actually is, how powerful our emotions are, how powerful our ability to receive and be and rest and restore and allow actually is, I think we recognize that all of this has been within us all along, often suppressed or repressed. I know that is absolutely the case for me. But also that we can be the most powerful versions of ourselves when we integrate and celebrate those energies. So I think sometimes when I meet people, when we have an initial conversation about feminine energy, they're like, oh, cool. So it's like, you're just chilling way more. And I actually, maybe, but for me, it's more, how can we amalgamate and integrate these energies into what we already know and allow ourselves to become the most powerful versions of ourselves, because the women that I tend to work with are high achieving, high performing, very ambitious women. So it's not ever a case of, or we just lay down, relax and do nothing. It's that we respect, honor and celebrate our feminine energy and recognize how much that actually supports us in a high achieving way, to live life with your big visions and big dreams and big ambitions, without the pressure, the hustle, the force, but actually with joy and pleasure and it feeling more delicious than ever. I think we haven't been taught to prioritize pleasure. We haven't been taught to prioritize play and joy. And so returning, it's such a childlike way, right? We're so good at that when we're kids. So returning to those energies as well supports us in the most amazing way to have, I guess what we would say, have it all, right? I don't believe that anything could be true. So we get to have the high achieving, the high level output, the productivity, but it gets to feel more attuned, more tuned in, we get to feel more turned on by it. It feels like our truth rather than just a head game.
Yeah. Wow. There is so much in there. That was just so beautiful. I want to like go back just a little bit because you mentioned we're kind of trained that giving is more important than receiving. It's better to give than receive. First of all,
Mm.
I've never heard feminine energy put with those words before. Like I've heard of it, kind of with more of the flow and some of the other conditioned pieces with it, but I hadn't had that specific statement ever mentioned before. And I just love that. I feel like I'm going to be thinking on that one a little bit just because of the nature. Like I am trained to give, to pour out consistently. And I'm taught as a woman, especially, that I need to pour out all the time. I need to be giving all the time. And then to pause and to receive is very difficult. And I don't know, that's just a really beautiful, like, reframe of that statement itself. And I love that. Do you have any other words kind of around that? I just wanted to pull that one back out because that specifically for me was like, oh, wow.
Right. Yes, absolutely. So we are taught to give and give and give and give and give. And then we look around at women around the world and we are collectively so often exhausted because there is a giving, a giving, a giving. And it's like, I love to think of it like the breath. Like if we're just always exhaling, if we're always giving and we never allow ourselves time for the inhale, like that is not sustainable, right? We can't just be exhaling and inhaling. We've been taught and conditioned, I believe, that receiving is somewhat selfish, that giving is the selfless, like the way we should be showing up. And in order to properly give, I believe, in order to give in your fullest expression and in the most potent and powerful way, we have to be full. Like we have to have a full inhale, right? We have to have a full lungs to be able to fully exhale. And so actually allowing ourselves the inhale, to use that analogy, is so necessary. And I think it's actually an art to be able to receive because most of us haven't been taught that. So I love to begin the exploration of what it is to receive by doing simple things like, if you're out in the sun, for example, and we can just be like in the do mode, and instead you can just take a moment and receive the sunshine on your skin. Like it can be as simple as that to begin. Let yourself kind of crack open into receiving mode in teeny tiny little ways throughout your life and just see how does it actually feel? Like how does it feel to not have to give anything in this moment, but simply just to receive? And I think it's such a necessary part of feminine power because then we get to give from an overflow rather than give from an exhausted place, an overgiving, which is just so normal. I heard Alicia Keys recently, who's just a guru of mine. She was asked about her boundaries, essentially, which is like, I guess, a piece of this, and she said every time she's asked to do something now, the first thing she asks herself is, "What's in it for me?" And I noticed my body like tighten up, like, oh, we can't ask that, right? Like we're not taught that we can ask, "What's in it for me?" first before what everybody else. And she spoke to the truth that for her, if there's nothing in it for her, she is just like, there's that continual exhaustion, that there's that continual, I am empty because I'm giving. But when I tune into how does this support me first, she can give more than ever. So I believe that receiving has a twofold effect. It allows us to feel more full and restored and I guess wonderful than ever. But secondly, it allows us to give more than ever. It's the most selfless thing we can do to become queens at receiving.
Yeah. That's so good. I love that. And yeah, that statement is definitely, it's the initial reaction is almost like a recoil, like, wait,
Right.
I don't think I can ask that question. That seems very like self-centered, but it's the yin and the yang. Like you need both parts in order to, and that's kind of what the whole feminine energy and embracing that is it's allowing this feminine energy and it's allowing the inhale so that we can exhale and the both and that's so good. I love that. Love it.
The both and absolutely.
Yeah. Something else that when you were sharing earlier, and this is just some of what I've been learning recently, or I guess it's kind of been an ongoing process over the past few years, is you were talking a lot about flow essentially and just living from a place where we can allow almost an ease to things where we don't have to be doing all the time, but we can embrace our ambition while also having kind of the rest and the downtime. And I know for me, something recently, or like over the past few years, has been this acceptance of my unique flow with my day, where I don't always love getting up super early. And then my peaks of like high ambitious times during the day are pretty unique. But I've been trying to accept and allow how my body works with that throughout the day, and how my body like works in its seasons. And it's really, really interesting. And it takes a lot of acceptance and giving myself permission. And I feel like that's such a huge part of this, is just really giving yourself permission to even just notice when your body is in flow. Which is really interesting, because that's not really what we're trained to do. It's not what we're conditioned to do. We're conditioned to follow the routines of like a corporate job, or follow the routines of, what is normal, to get up at a certain time and then end work at a certain time and work late for a certain time, and all of those different pieces. So I just wanted to throw that out there as well.
Oh, yes. Oh, I feel you so much on that. And I can totally relate to what you're saying, because I would say I don't have like the Instagrammable productivity kind of day schedule like we see other people have out in the world. Like, I'm not part of the 5 a.m. club at all. And I honestly don't think I ever will be. But there's kind of this underlying pressure, right, to, I guess, flow in inverted, in air quotes, in the way that everyone flows. But this is the brilliant thing about our uniqueness. So a few things on that. And I just love to kind of bring into the conversation the fact that, just like you said, the world essentially is set up for the corporate schedule, but it's also set up for the schedule of a male body. So it doesn't take into consideration a woman's cycle. It doesn't take into consideration things like the moon, all of this like outer seasons, things that we're actually experiencing. And women or people that identify as tend to kind of have a more cyclic way of living. So that is, I guess, another conversation, but I think an important kind of piece to note here is that we shift and change so much. So even the idea that we get into flow throughout our day can just change week to week to week, day to day to day.
Yeah.
I love the conversation of ease, because like I have a personal, I guess, distinction in that I am not interested in growth for the sake of growth. I'm interested in growth if it feels better. And I think in our masculine energy dominated world, we're taught like growth for the sake of growth. Like, you must be growing in order to be worthy. Your business, your work, your vision, your whatever has to be growing, even if it feels worse, even if you're more stressed, because everyone's still going to celebrate you, right? Like, they see the growth, and that to me is not something I'm willing to do. And I don't believe that it's necessary. So by ease, I suppose the place in which I love to play is that we can move away from the hustle, but like you say, still continue to rise into the greater vision, the ambition. But we don't have to do it at the sacrifice of our emotional well-being, our mental health, our spiritual nourishment, but it can be in addition to. So I totally, like I say, resonate with what you shared, and I feel like my thoughts are similar in that I believe so much in taking care of our own selves first and allowing that to be the starting point of flow. So like, what does it look like for you to feel really amazing and then work from that place? What does it feel like for you to get into the state that you want to be in and then create from that place, as opposed to, we're kind of taught that we work hard and then we get the treat afterwards, right? It's like the dessert after the dinner, rather than let yourself create the state that you want to work from and then work from that place. That has, again, a twofold effect. And one, everything's way more joyful and way more enjoyable and way more pleasure filled, but also we become more productive, more efficient, more on purpose, because we're already lit up. We're not front of our laptops, like furrowed brow, everything's very serious and intense, and now we need to start working because that's the only way that we are worthy. Rather, we do everything that we need to do to take care of our being in all ways, emotional, physical, mental, spiritual, physical, and then we create from there. Honestly, I feel like every time I have conversations or see a woman step into that, I'm like, haven't we hacked the system? Like, you get your work done in half the amount of time because you've taken care of yourself, but you also got to feel better the whole time as well. Like, it's a win-win. It makes so much sense to me.
Yeah, I feel that. I even just last year I was in a job for a short period of time where I had to follow the corporate schedule, and it was so interesting to me because I felt like I had to make my work take longer because I was there for a certain period of time, and that was just how it is. Like, that's, you work for this many hours, and even if my work was done early, like, you just stay. And so it was like this really strange feeling, especially because I have worked for myself for a long time. And then it was like, wait, this is weird. Like, this doesn't make any sense. And then, like, coming back to my own schedule again, it's like, oh, I can let my work be easy and I can let it flow. And it's such a shift in mindset. And it takes a lot of retraining your brain to be okay with that too, after you've worked in a normal setting for a while. But I love that. And I also love what you said about, it wasn't growth for the sake of ease, but just like, I don't remember what did you say about that again?
I think it was like moving away from growth for the sake of growth and only growing feels better. Like, more if it feels better, but otherwise, why more?
Yes. Yeah. It was like growth for the sake of worth. Like, you're already worthy in the traditional, like, work and masculine sense, strictly masculine. We feel like we have to grow in order to be worthy. But when we kind of shift things on their head, there's an opportunity to allow life to be pleasurable and ease filled, and like integrate growth as it feels good. That was kind of what you were saying, right?
Yes. Thank you for putting it like that. I want to write that down. Yeah, so good.
Oh, I love it. So good. So to kind of move into like the feminine power again, I would love if you could share just how have you seen feminine power positively impact your clients just as they've stepped into their feminine power and reclaimed their feminine power?
The first thing that comes to mind for me is watching as my clients who do have businesses, not everybody does, but my clients that do have businesses start to run them in a way where they're working less, having more fun, feeling more pleasure, making more money. It's like best of all worlds. And I think, like, I would have used to have said, surely that's too good to be true. Like, surely it can't be that good, right? But what I've noticed is that celebration, that honoring, that real lifting up of the innate feminine way is just supporting them in the most amazing ways, including business. And so I'm thinking about, clients who are having high level kind of meetings or negotiations with like big business or whatever it might be, and are showing up in their feminine way, speaking from intuition, talking from the heart, like letting their feelings be a part of the like even the contract, like allowing their intuition to really tell them what's a yes and what's a no, and just like having massive wins. So that's been so cool to see, that it doesn't just support us in the resting, the being, but actually in those kind of like highly ambitious moments as well. I think secondly, I love how simply by having, a conversation like this, there can be a remembering about how worthy and how beautiful we already are, just because we are, not because we're achieving anything extra, not because we're proving it in any way, but just because we are. It's like an innate worthiness. And life changes so much when we operate from the place of, I am already worthy. What now? Not, I am striving to be worthy. Help me. And there's a wholeness, right? To that, there's a wholeness to what can I create when I already know I'm worthy no matter what? That feels super exciting to me.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. And thirdly, actually, there's probably four things, but thirdly, there's a real visceral releasing of shame of the things that we have been carrying around, of like, this is a weakness for me, my deep sensitivity, the way that I feel, the way that I love so hard, the way that I like, whatever it might be, that has been shamed, even kind of taboo at times, like our cyclic nature, for example, like is something that is not yet fully celebrated around the world. There's a shift in that for sure, but it's still not, like a really normalized, powerful element of life.
Yeah.
And so when we release the shame of all of the things we thought weren't our superpowers, and it's almost like a remembering that they actually are, remembering and embracing that they are, it's like in an instant we get to live from our true nature and show up from that place, and everything changes there. And I think a consequence of that is a deep level confidence that comes from just knowing that, oh, I already have everything within me. There is nothing about who I naturally am that I need to suppress anymore. The things that I was suppressing that are so powerful in me are now allowed to be celebrated, and that the confidence that comes from that is so amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Ugh, I love that. That's so beautiful. And so I feel like it's just like such a deep rooted thing too. It just feels so good even hearing about the reclamation of others. And it's so refreshing. We hear so many stories, especially right now, of things in the world that are going on, I feel like, and to hear and to remember that all of these other beautiful, good things are happening where women are able to step into their power and to rise up and tap into these parts of them. Because I think that it's interesting to hear that as well, because I feel like that is such a big part of leadership. And I really resonated when you talked specifically about a woman entering into like a business meeting, and she can allow all parts of her a place at the table. She can feel into decisions, and if it's a yes or a no. And I feel like that's when you can really see the feminine and masculine power come together into decision making, specifically like allowing feelings a place at the table, allowing the analytics a place at the table, allowing your gut instinct a place at the table. It creates such powerful leadership, and seeing women kind of rise up into those positions is such a beautiful thing. And it's kind of incomparable. It's really incredible. So I loved hearing that. And the worth piece is so huge as well. When we can really feel whole in ourselves, that confidence is just like another whole piece of the picture, which is so beautiful. I love it. That's so good.
I feel that. And I think also just like another little extra piece on that, bringing the feminine energy into all situations, is what I've been kind of watching, noticing, and supporting is women not having to change their narrative or their, like, even their actual language when they show up in those kind of environments, not having to kind of get super hard or super logic focused, but actually just allowing in those spaces for them to speak out or write out an email in a way that is actually their internal dialogue, but expressed outwardly in these kind of big boss meetings. Rather than like coding a message or an email or a meeting
that takes hours because you're trying to finesse it.
Yes. And we kind of change I know I have in the past really changed my language and like wanted to seem more quote unquote professional, but actually recognizing that there is no more or less professional just because it's in a masculine language than it is in a feminine. It's been a cool realization.
Oh, that's really good. Yeah. It's so interesting because there's so many different facets to it. And I know for me, I feel like just you saying that, it's like, it's kind of like a calling out as well, because I feel like I still think so much. I'm very much like I feel like I have I'm like right brained, but I'm also creative. So sometimes I'm really messy. And then sometimes I'm very like type A. And sometimes my type A side really like takes control, and that's that masculine side. And some of that's the conditioning and some of it's like just innately within me. But sometimes I let that take over, and then the flow of things can't happen. So that's really, really beautiful just to think about allowing your speech to just be what it is and not feeling like that like defines your worth as well. Oh, that's really good. Oh, gosh.
I guess to quote you, like allowing all of you to have a seat at the table, in all situations. And of course there are going to be times where we are more left brain or right brained, and that's cool. Like that is the part of bringing all of us to the table, but not kind of acting from conditioning, but just letting all of you be heard.
That's good. I'm gonna have to sit with that one for a while. Oh, I love it. So we've kind of talked about some different ways that people can implement ease, and you mentioned like the sun and kind of soaking that in for some different suggestions and tips for this. But I'm curious, what are like some ways that women can implement and tap into their feminine power and kind of rise up in their own lives with ease? And this is probably going to take a little bit of a relevant for now, I guess, shift, because I'm curious as well. We're rising up in a unique time in history where this virus has taken a lot of emotion, like a lot of emotional energy, and everyone's approaching it kind of from different places financially, with different job situations and business situations. So I'm curious how you would suggest tapping into our feminine power during this time and kind of rising up in our lives with ease amidst our kind of chaotic and very different situations. Yeah, so I'm just going to throw that your way.
Yeah. I guess I would preface this by saying, of course, we've never been here before, so no one has the answers.
Yeah.
The things that come to mind for me are firstly really recognizing the conditioning or the mindset around our feminine energy. So if right now you're feeling called to love harder and allow yourself to just be and receive and rest, like I think we're going through a bit of a global healing in some ways. I really recognize there's very real pain and challenge. And at the same time, I think we're going through a healing, and that people are being forced to slow down. They're being forced to be with their feelings. They're being forced to like be in community and take care of each other and nurture and love. And so an invitation, I suppose, to recognize if you are feeling like these things are less important than the masculine traits which live within us too. That would be the first thing. Simply an inner exploration, a recognition. What are your thoughts around this? No need to necessarily change it right now because that's up to you, but just an understanding of your own inner world. Secondly, I would say you are always your own greatest teacher. And so following your intuition here above, there is so much noise, right? Like there is a lot of noise out there.
Oh, yeah.
And people telling you the right way to do everything. And like, the right way to work from home, the right way to like show up for your political beliefs right now, the right way to like live in so many different ways. And I guess a tip here from my perspective is to follow your intuition above everything, because you always know what is best for you. I always say in conversations with clients, or if I'm teaching, like override what I say with what you believe to be true, because what I say is, it comes from me and my love for you, but you will always be your own greatest teacher, and your intuition is more powerful than anything I can ever say to you. So I think really tapping into your own voice here in these times where there are a lot of noises and a lot of voices and a lot of opinions pulling you all sorts of ways, I think is really necessary. It's almost like a slowing down, tuning in and asking what is true, right and real for me right now. And the third thing would be really leaning into feminine power. And I think of so I come from New Zealand, and that is my home country. And the Prime Minister of New Zealand. Her name's Jacinda Ardern. I don't know if you know her, but she is just one of the most beautiful leaders I've ever seen. And she really lives out compassion. She lives out love and equality. And like I've listened to podcasts of hers where she said, people have told me that I can't be powerful because I'm not aggressive, but I believe that compassion is the most powerful element of all. And so it's totally not what we used to, right? In terms of like that level of leadership. She'll do Facebook Lives from her couch after putting her baby to bed and just talk about, how she can support everyone. And it's very it's super different to typically what we see in terms of that style of leadership. But it's been beautiful to watch, and to watch how people have responded to her and felt soothed and calmed, but also very safe and held because of the level of compassion that she's leading with. And so if you're listening to this and you are a leader, which I imagine so many of you will be, allowing yourself to play with the potency, the power of intuition, of compassion, of taking care of others, of nurturing, of allowing yourself to receive, of letting yourself be human. I just think we're in a new time where a new level of leader is really rising up, and that's so beautiful to see and very important. But remembering that feminine power is extremely powerful, and allowing yourself to really be in that, be in those energies and lead and show up and live from that place.
Yeah. That's so good. And that's such a beautiful example. I'm not super familiar with New Zealand, but I love that example of leadership. And especially when you use the word compassion, I feel like that is not a word that we always associate traditionally with leadership. That's so beautiful. I love that.
I'm obsessed with her and the way that she shows up and loves people, and she speaks about empathy being a really important part of leading a country. It's just so refreshing in our world.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible. I'm going to have to go find her and see her on her lives for sure.
Yes. Yeah.
That's so fun. That's also so fun that she allows herself to be so approachable through a Facebook Live. That's really beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's lovely.
As we're kind of coming to wrap up questions, before I actually start asking some of the wrap up questions, is there anything else you feel like you want to speak out or chat through, whether you're just feeling like it needs to be spoken out, or that maybe perhaps we started talking about and then you want to tie it up in any way? I just want to kind of throw that out there before I ask wrap up questions.
The only thing that comes to mind is that we are all such unique beings, and so there's no right or wrong way, right? Speaking about feminine power and the potency of our feminine energy doesn't mean that is the way we should live 100% of the time in order to be our most powerful selves. Instead, I would love this to be an invitation to explore how this part of you, however much of you this is powerful too. I think sometimes this conversation can lead us to forget the power of the masculine energy too. It's all of us in full integration, allowing, as you say, all of us a seat at the table is, I think, the key here. And so we're all going to have unique blends of the masculine, the feminine, and that changes through different phases of our lives, but also through as we cycle through our own cycles in all sorts of ways, as we kind of ebb and flow with all sorts of different variables in our life. And so essentially, no pressure, to suddenly become super, 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 super in your feminine energy. If that actually isn't the most natural thing for you, the most important thing is that you are you. Being more than ever before is the key. And if that means an embracing and a celebration of your feminine energy, awesome, go with that. If it doesn't, that's cool too.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So good. So good. So I'm curious, what is one way that you slow down amidst our busy world?
Well, interestingly, as someone who has an online business, almost solely online, I would say the thing for me is being offline. It's being away from the noise, because even in our times of slowing down, like, what was a lazy Sunday 10 years ago is so often a lazy Sunday with 40,000 pieces of information, stimulation, and like messages, right? And so our mind actually never gets the chance to fully have space anymore often. And so it's a real offline thing for me. It's like being in my real life and remembering how much space there is in the day-to-day when I let myself not be attached to a constant stream of inspiration / information / stimulation. It's almost an immediate reset, like a sweet relief of, oh, there's space here. There's actually so much space available to me when I tune out from all the noise for a while.
Yeah. That's really good. I know you mentioned you had just been on a walk, and I feel like that comes to mind for me. Just when I can set my phone down and just go for a walk without it, it's such a beautiful space. And it is sometimes we become really attached to the information. And so when we can set it down, it is like a really beautiful reminder of, oh, wow, there's like a normal life that's right here in front of me. And like real people, like right here.
Actual humans.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
And then who are a couple of your current role models, or just kind of like people that you look up to, mindset expanders, things of that sort?
3 people come to mind for me. The first is who I actually believe coined the term expander. I believe, I might be wrong about that. Lacey Phillips.
Yeah. Yep.
Who is an amazing teacher on all things manifestation. I love her really grounded way of teaching. Glennon Doyle is someone I'm really into and inspired by right now. I think in terms of the reclamation, she feels like such a leader in that space. And thirdly, a mentor of my own, Haley Carr, who I just love and adore, and has this way of being extremely powerful without ever having to shout it out,
Yeah.
like a quiet power. And I love that. So those are the few humans that come to mind for me.
That's awesome. And then how can we find and support you online?
Great question. So I spend most of my social media time over on Instagram. My Instagram handle it's a long one. It's Sammie, Sammie. My middle name's Sonia, Sonja, Fleming, Fleming. Sammie Sonia Fleming over on Instagram, and then SammieFleming.com is my website. So those are the 2 spaces which I love to spend my time.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. This is so beautiful. And I feel like there were just little pieces throughout this whole thing that I'm going to have to go back and listen to and just ponder and think about, which I think is always so beautiful when I can have a conversation and be like, oh, I need to go back and like soak some of this in. So thank you so much for joining me. And is there anything else you feel like you want to speak at before we wrap up this call?
Oh, that feels really complete for me, actually. Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure to have this conversation with you, and I can't wait to hear what people are taking away from it.
Awesome. Thank you so, so much. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Reclamation Podcast. I hope it served you on your own reclamation journey, and know that I'm rooting for you all the way. If you want to learn more about the show guests, head to the website, thereclamationpodcast.com. And if you found value in the show, 5 stars is always appreciated. Good things are coming for you. Bye for now.